All humans have a sword they are born with. Every year on your birthday, your sword gets more detailed and powerful. You are born with a gun. Part 1. In a few minutes, the Festival of Change will begin, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. A public holiday where the entire world welcomes the latest development of their soul sword. It's a time of revelry and duels and experimenting with new powers. It's also the hardest day of the year to hide the fact that you don't have soul sword. I've been keeping up with the development of my sword so far, but I've run out of road. As a child, I could find a slightly larger penknife or butter knife or steak knife. It was unconventional, but as a narrative, it made sense. Some were late bloomers, and their sword took flight as a young adult, earning life-changing powers like flight to balance off the early disappointment. I was too broke to buy a showy replica and too weak and slow to suggest that I had gained any physical or mental powers. My truth was going to come out. I had no soul sword. I had a useless weapon in its place. It had grown over the years as a sword would, from a tiny derringer through a revolver, automatic, and now was a small machine pistol. I suppose it is heavy enough that I could hit someone with it? Or perhaps the shock of seeing a gun might give someone pause, but guns were unheard of, and so bullets were impossible to come by. Even if they were, my gun changed every year and the ammunition would be useless. What is more pointless, a gun with no bullets or a sword with no power? Probably the gun, although an underpowered sword was more likely to get you challenged to a duel you can't win. I stepped out of the door with the beautiful katana I had managed to afford last year to bluff my way through the last festival. I knew it would not change, could not change, but staying at home was not an option. It was the only compulsory element of our lives. Dying was my only way out of this, and I was not about to take my own life. There was, however, a very real chance it would be taken from me by some overzealous festival goer, looking to try out his new power. They would have no idea I was defenseless, and what would be just the equivalent of a pat on the back between friends would be enough to split me in two. The town square was already flooded with excitement and alcohol, and people with blades. I picked my way through the crowd looking for some cover so that when the change happened, I could shield myself from any prying eyes. It would be obvious nothing had happened, and even through the booze that would pique interest in others. I smelt ozone on the air, and I knew the moment was near. People began to raise their blades aloft, and a low keening came from 1,000 throats at once. I tried to follow, but the futility of it made my katana weigh a ton. My arms dropped, and so did my gaze. As it did so, I caught the eyes of a girl about my age. She looked at me with the same sorrow I felt. She held a short, curved scimitar with a jeweled pommel, but I noticed how she avoided it touching anyone else's weapon. I looked at her, and she looked at me, and all around us, the golden glow of the change bloomed. The keening rose in pitch and volume as people watched their soul sword explode with power and potential. Neither of our blades so much as flickered. I made a decision that would change my life. I elbowed my way through the throng and took her free hand in mine. Partially out of self-interest, partly out of excitement, and partly out of concern for her. She was in as much danger as I was. "Do you want to get out of here?" I asked. Two people leaving together to do things two people might do together was about the only excuse that would stand up for why you missed the festival. Pairing up after the change was a big part of the appeal of the day. "Yes, please. Quickly," she said, and I led her as quickly as I could back to my small flat on the edge of town. Once we were clear of the main square and mass of people, I risked talking again. "I'm Treep," I said as an introduction. "It's not far now. Have you always been like this? Like me?" "Yanni," she said. "People call me Yanni. Most people call me Nanny Yanni because I'm so scared of fighting. They would be scared too if they were unarmed. And yes, I've always been like this. I just ran out of options this year." "Me too," I said. "I just assumed this would be the year I got found out." We reached the door of my flat and I unlocked it. "This is me. Do you want to come in? No one is around. You could probably sneak home now." "No," she said, walking into my place. "I think it's best if I stay with you a bit yet. It will be safer later when people start heading home and the initial duels are all completed." I followed her into the flat. Then it hit me. What I'd left on the table. "Fuck!" I shouted and tried to force my way past her. It was too late. Yanni turned to face me, open-mouthed in shock, holding what now appeared to be a short assault rifle in her hands. It was still crackling with power, post its changing. "It's a hobby of mine," I said. "It's no big deal. I've not ever used it or anything." She carefully placed the gun on the table. Then she removed her backpack and opened it, crouching down to retrieve something. "Come on," I said. "Don't tase me. I was trying to help you. Please." I'm not gonna tase you," Yanni said, holding her hands out to me. "I think that we are going to be able to help each other." I looked down. A crackle of light traced an outline I dreamt of for my whole life. She held a magazine. Enjoying the story? Don't forget to subscribe and comment. Your support helps us create more stories just for you. All right, let's continue the story. Part 2. Yanni looked at me, and I looked at her. Then we both looked at the gun on the table behind her. "Do you think it will match?" I asked. I had never even seen a magazine before in real life, and until 2 minutes ago, I'd never seen the gun that it had become. She shrugged. "God knows. Do you think we should try it out?" "Yeah?" I said incredulously. "You seriously thinking of just heading back home without trying?" She frowned and looked crestfallen. "Sorry," I said. "I didn't mean to be a dick. I'm just excited. This is one of the most thrilling moments of my life, and sometimes I can be a bit sarcastic as a defense mechanism. In fact, who am I kidding? This is the most exciting moment of my life." Yanni brightened. "Me too. You want to do it, or shall I?" I took a couple of steps to the table and retrieved the weapon from where she had left it. "I guess together," I said. "I'll hold the gun, and you put it in." She nodded and moved into position in front of me, holding the magazine in both hands. She looked like she was worried it would explode. "Ready?" I asked. Yanni nodded and took a deep breath. She pushed the magazine towards the magazine well on the underside of the rifle, then gasped as tendrils of light began to extend from both the gun and the item she held. They looked slow, like the lights in a plasma ball. She pushed the magazine home with a deeply pleasing click. It was a quiet but layered noise, as if 100 guns were being loaded all at once. I felt a rush of energy flow through me, not from the gun but from my heart, or the area just below it, where the legend said the soul had been cut from man to place into the soul swords. I felt like singing, like everyone else in the square. "Whoa," I said eloquently. "It feels like I'm inside you," Yanni said. "It feels good." I laughed suddenly, euphorically. "The fuck, dude, we've just met." Yanni laughed too, but blushed hard as she did so. "Sorry, I apparently make sexual innuendos instead of getting sarcastic like you. I'm not joking, though. It does feel different. Do you feel it as well?" I nodded. "I think I finally get what all the drinking and dancing and dueling is all about. I want to go and try this out so bad, I think I might die." "We should go somewhere quiet to test it," Yanni said. "I know a place. Or we could just do it here. Everyone is out." I pointed the gun at my sofa. There was no safety catch. "I really don't think this is a good idea," she said. "Well, with the greatest respect, I'm the one with the trigger," I said and squeezed it. Yanni covered her ears, and nothing happened. "What the fuck?" I said. "It's loaded, and it still doesn't work. Still doesn't work. Do we need to find something else?" "A three-way?" Yanni asked. "Sorry, I'm trying not to make jokes. Come on, let's go out and find a spot to work it out that won't blow holes in your flat. This isn't like a kid's soul sword. You are jumping straight to an adult weapon, and you need to treat it with respect." She had a good point. This gun had been developing my whole life, and I'd never even seen what the early levels did. I gestured towards the door. "Lead on. I'll go find a duffel bag for this." Yanni took me to a small clearing in the woods outside of town. She said it was where she went to get away from people over the weekend. I understood the sentiment. I didn't have a lot of friends either. It was hard to when you are missing something that is so central to who everyone else is. "Now," she said, "let's try that again." I took the gun out of my duffel bag and took aim at a nearby tree, squeezing the trigger without so much ceremony. The bang was impossibly loud in the quiet wood. "Fuck!" I shouted in amazement. The tree leaned drunkenly, with half the trunk turned to splinters around head height. I aimed again at the next tree, grinning from ear to ear, and pulled the trigger. "No!" shouted Yanni as she spotted a squirrel running behind the branch of my target. The gun did not fire. "Ha!" I said. "Ha! You nearly killed that poor animal." "Yeah, but I didn't, and I pulled the trigger, just like in the flat when you didn't want me to." "So?" she said, tapping her foot impatiently. "I think it only fires if you want it to. We both need to want it to work, for it to work. Here, you try and pull the trigger. I passed her the gun and she pointed and pulled the trigger at a couple of trees. It clicked impotently. Then she passed it back, and I blew those two trees into matchwood. Looks like we are going to have to work together, Yanni said. Seems like a fair check and balance to this level of power. To this level of power. To what level of power? Slurred a voice from behind us. In the excitement and noise, we had not spotted that we had an audience of one. Hey, buddy, I said to the drunk young man. Time to take a hike. We are working on something out here. Why don't you go back to the party in town? The man grinned. That sounds like a challenge. He drew a shining tri-bladed sword and swished it experimentally. Couldn't find anyone to duel with in town. I hefted the gun to my shoulder. Looks like you brought a sword to a gunfight, pal. The man looked confused. It's not really a gunfight, said Yanni, on account of there only being one gun. Seems a bit like you need two guns at least to have a gunfight. The man looked more confused. Shut the fuck up, Yanni, I hissed. Listen, I really don't want to hurt you. I don't think this would be a duel. I pointed the gun at a tree behind the man and looked at Yanni. She nodded her agreement, and I blew that tree in two. As the splinters rained down, the man's confusion shifted to fear, and he turned to run. Jesus Christ, said Yanni. Are we like a superhero team now? If we are, you are the sidekick. I said nothing. My mind was racing too far ahead. Thank you for listening to the story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter. Your support means a lot.